Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro bodybuilder. Today's guest is Mike Condell. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, man? Appreciate you having me.
For sure. It's going great, Mike. I'm excited to chop it up with you. The first question that I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Favorite of all time. I got into bodybuilding, seeing that, I think everyone's familiar with that epic Jay Cutler quad stomp cover of Muscular Development. That's an iconic photo. I think most of us remember. So that was definitely a big one. Jay's always been a great guy. Used to be local here. He's a big one. Dorian definitely up there for being ahead of his time, bringing that insane size of conditioning. And then, really liking a lot of the new guys. Ian's up there, seeing what Bumstead's doing with, the notoriety and bodybuilding, and kind of tying that all back into being, mainstream as opposed to a freak. It's all good stuff. So that would be the top names for right now.
Excellent, man. I love it. So, Mike, what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
Sure. Started training about 14, 15 as a freshman, sophomore in high school. It was for athletic performance back then, at Mike Boyle's up here in the Boston area.
Cool. So tell me a little bit then, Mike, about where you grew up. Talk about family dynamics, talk about sports you were involved with, talk about anything that maybe really impacted or shaped those childhood years up to about high school. And then we'll stop there at high school, and then we'll move on.
Sure. So I spent most of my life up here in New England, born and raised in Wilmington, Mass. Middle school, high school in Wilmington. A full family down there. You mentioned, family dynamics and stuff that shaped my life. The thing that stands out the most was actually my father's accident. Was rear-ended by a dump truck in Boston when I was about 4 or 5. That completely changed, a lot of how my family operated. Lots of surgeries, lots of therapy, lots of prescriptions, lots of rest. It took away from his ability to be the best dad he could be present with us. So that's always been kind of, I won't say hanging over my head, but now that I have my own son, it's something that I'll never forget. What was taken from us, always be determined to make sure that I do all that I can to make sure that never happens to me here with him. I grew up in Wilmington. Athletics wise, was a soccer player my whole life, from 3 feet tall up through high school and club. Got into track in high school as well. Ended up winning a state championship in the 800 meters. Again, as part of that athletic performance thing, started training early. And went from what was probably a 98-pound freshman to nothing crazy, but gained 12 to 15 pounds pretty quick, and that that completely changes how you perform on the field. So got a really good start there. Both my parents were in construction. My mom is still a chief estimator, just down the street from where we grew up, actually. Still doing what she does, very good at her craft. I've got a younger brother. His name's Alex, also in construction. He is a union mason, doing great. He also has a son, so we've got 2 4-year-olds running around just about every time we're together, which is a blast. I think that covers most of it. I had a pretty typical childhood for someone in suburbia. Definitely wasn't not one of these guys that can claim I came from the bottom or anything. I had a great upbringing. My parents were good. Always, we never wanted for anything. If we struggled, they made sure we didn't know a single thing about it. And I, thank them for that, for, making me who I am today.
Awesome, man. So, in regards to your parents and like kind of what they instilled in you, is work ethic something that you really kind of learned from them and took away from them?
Yeah, I think you don't realize it as a kid, but especially now you look back and all those times, I mean, it would have been really, really easy to bitch about circumstances, especially my father's accident, taking away a whole income from a family, living off of one income, still trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy with 2 sons who were, involved in the community with sports and all that. You start to understand kind of what's important and what isn't, what's really a problem and what isn't. And I think that ties in really, really big to one of the biggest issues I have with bodybuilding at this point is how tough everybody says it is, and how much of a sacrifice it is, and how terrible it is to be at the end of prep. And I think everyone starts there, and all I hope for the young guys is they gain that perspective at some point of, this is all a choice. The only people really sacrificing are your friends and family. Not eating your favorite cheeseburger or your favorite cookie for 16 weeks is not really all that much to ask of someone who has some major goals. So, but enough of that tangent for a while. But yeah, my mom, through all that, always worked, always got us to all our practices, always had home cooked meals 3 times a day when we were home. Always made sure we were at, playing with friends, seeing family, hosting holidays. And that, even though you don't realize it as a young kid, it starts to sink in. And they always supported all my efforts. Like you said, getting me to practice on time, making sure I was, weight training, which, when you're not struggling, but when things are tight, paying for a top tier training service like Mike Boyle's, that's a stretch. And they always made it work for me. So seeing that day in, day out, 18, 20, 25 years definitely instills in you the things that, you need to kind of do it on your own.
Awesome, man. So talk to me then, you actually had the opportunity to train under Mike Boyle then?
Yeah, I was there for 2 or 3 years.
Okay, talk about that, because he's obviously a big name within strength and conditioning.
Yeah, I have the Instagram post as a draft ready to go. Want to make sure I got the words right. Thanking quite a few people, and Mike and his staff at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning are absolutely pivotal, not to only my success in soccer and track, which, at the high school level was pretty decent, but in keeping me injury free for what's been a 10, 12 year career focused on bodybuilding so far. And it helped me develop muscle safely. I cannot express enough to any parents who are listening with young kids, getting into athletics, getting your kids strength trained by someone who knows what they're doing early, is probably the single best thing you can do for their long-term development, for their discipline, and for their performance. Entered Mike Boyles as a freshman, hadn't really weight trained at all much before that. I screwed around in the garage like everyone did when they got the weight set for Christmas at like 12 years old, and punch a bag and all that kind of stuff. Learned to squat well, learned clean, learned to snatch, and all those Olympic lifts, all those very technical lifts. Mike kept everybody from advancing in weight until the technique was perfect. And learning that stuff early, you imprint those patterns early before strength becomes a factor in making things more dangerous. I really can't speak to it enough.
Talk to me. You said there, as you were talking about Mike, you said something to the effect of developing muscle safely. Can you expound a little bit more on that? Because I'm fascinated with that myself.
Yeah. So if you look at a lot of Mike's posts, he tends to debunk a lot of the trends that are going on right now with, some of the crazier stuff debunks itself, but even some of the newer stuff that's coming out with the exploding number of studies we have on hypertrophy and performance and ROM and all this stuff. The entire staff, very, very huge on functioning in your functional ROM. We're not dropping into squats at a free fall and bouncing 6 inches before you start the eccentric on the rep. We're not smashing barbells into our chest to put up 225 when you weigh 115 pounds. All those things, you see guys doing, not even just new guys in the gym, but experienced bodybuilders, experienced powerlifters doing that stuff. And maybe powerlifting is a little different. But you see that stuff, and then inevitably you see an injury. You see a pec tear or a hip displacement or a serious knee problem. And I think you can only repeat those patterns so long before it's either an acute or a chronic injury. And if you can't really accrue muscle over long term, if you can't train long term, a lot of these injuries guys tend to recover from pretty quickly, which is great. But if you can't stay healthy, you can't train. If you can't train, you can't gain muscle.
Great point, man. Thank you for expounding on that a little bit more. So sounds like you were a really strong athlete, up through high school and stuff. When you were in high school, Mike, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do, quote unquote, when you grew up? Was there a career that you were going to pursue? Once you graduated high school, did you pursue that? Did life take you in a different direction? Talk to us a little bit about post high school. What did that look like?
So growing up, I always thought I wanted to be an architect. My parents were in construction. I didn't really like the whole construction part of it, but it was the industry my family was in. So I was like naturally gravitated towards something in that area, and architecture was it. And then I got to a certain age and realized that most architects make shit for money. So my parents kind of gave me the threw up the red flag and said, that's great, but think about long term. And I'm also, looking back, not very artistic. It's not really my strong suit. And a lot of architects tend to be very abstract and off the wall and artsy. So that wasn't quite it. But I did enjoy taking stuff apart and putting it back together. So that kind of pushed me towards engineering. So about halfway through high school, heard that my high school, Wilmington High School, has a scholarship to one of the better engineering schools in the country. It used to be not well known, and honestly, I haven't kept up very well, but I'm fairly certain it's more well known now. Used to be called University of Missouri Rolla, now called Missouri S&T, generally called like the MIT in the Midwest. So my high school had a full scholarship offered by someone who had been an alumni of both schools. Heard about that and thought, I can give up 4 years of my time to be in a kind of boring place like middle of Missouri to get a free degree and a great education. So applied for it and got it. Entered the mechanical engineering degree at MS&T. Graduated 4 years later. Mid threes GPA, and then started kind of in abstract engineering called logistics, which is kind of boring and terrible, but got me in the door. So got started right away, and been doing engineering ever since. Now I'm a mission assurance engineer for L3 Harris. If you've seen Google Maps, or if you saw the photos of Jupiter that came back last year, both of those satellites use the same kind of technology that we put up every year. So it's been a fun ride so far.
So basically you're saying you're a smart guy, huh?
I won't say that. I'm smart enough. I work hard enough to stay in the rooms that people let me into. The great part about my career development so far is that I've worked hard enough to get myself into those rooms where I'm far from the smartest person. And it's served me well. I've learned a lot. I've been mostly in defense, now in aerospace, which kind of leaks into defense a little bit, but we also do the private and commercial sector as well. So it's been one giant learning curve. I'm definitely more of a people management person, which I'm pushing towards now. Don't plan on being the kind of guy they call a fellow, that sits in the room with the books stacked up and the messy desk. That's probably not going to be me. But yeah, it's been great.
So we're going to get into all things bodybuilding here in a minute, but I want to ask you first, with your engineering career, does it give you quite a bit of flexibility in terms of getting your meals in and doing the bodybuilding stuff like during work, or do you have to kind of squeeze the bodybuilding stuff in?
It's generally been pretty easy. I have worked a few jobs where I've been on the production floor or in a testing environment where I have to schedule meals around work, instead of the other way around. But generally, most of the time these days, I'm at a desk. And since this whole COVID fiasco, I've been working from home. So it's been about 2 years working up here in my spare bedroom as my makeshift office. And I know most people have hated it, but for a bodybuilder, this is as close to ideal as it gets. As long as I don't have a meeting, I can walk downstairs, cook a fresh meal from scratch, come up here, eat it, keep working. As long as I don't have meetings, head to the gym when I want to, train, come back, as long as I get my time in, get my work done, which I've been able to do. It's been great, man. They're actually trying to bring us back to the office. Some people started just before Christmas break. We have an extended layoff over Christmas, so I won't be back till January, but we're starting to phase back into the office now. I'll be going back as hybrid, which, better than nothing, but I would certainly not be upset to continue this endeavor as a pro working from home with how easy it's been to manage all these things together.
So last question about your career, your engineering career. What's kind of like over the expanse of, the years that you've been in the career of engineering, like what's something that you've kind of like learned maybe through engineering about yourself, or what's something that's like really opened up your eyes in terms of being a career individual and having something like an engineering career?
I think in general, people, and I don't know if it's because of the entrepreneurship is so big now, and like everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. No one wants to be an employee. Everyone wants to be the boss. I've done pretty well for myself, and I've owned a business before, so I've done all that as well. But I've done pretty well for myself being an employee, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. The people that work, barring some, political stuff that might happen or some ass kissing, the work never changes. If you work, you're gonna find your way up. I've gone from, doing the intern work of sorting digital files into folders to leading teams and then, failure investigations and being giving exponentially more responsibility, day over day, week over week, just because I do the work. And that really doesn't change really whatever. Doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're bodybuilding or whether you're talking about your career. You do the work, the results come, people notice, they get behind you, they get vested in your success, and you keep moving. And with that comes, just being a decent person. I think, especially with bodybuilding, this industry kind of gets a shitty rap for the personalities people think we have, and certainly some do. Just be a decent person, do the work, man. It's really not much harder than that.
Basic and simple, man. I like it. So let's transition into bodybuilding talk. So you obviously started serious strength training between the age of 14 and 15, you said, under Mike Boyle, sport specific strength and conditioning training. When did things transition into bodybuilding training? And just talk to me about like your first competition and just that evolution.
Sure. So it really switched to bodybuilding after I got to college. I walked on to MS&T's track team as an 800-meter runner, and a couple weeks in, just realized I didn't have the fire for it anymore. It just really wasn't what I wanted to do with my spare time. Got a couple weeks in and just didn't enjoy it anymore. So ended up leaving the team, and at that point joined a fraternity, Sigma Chi, and met one of the more influential people in my life. He's been a great friend of mine for 12 years now. He was a football player where he was, and was into weight training, for that, and found himself in the same spot as me coming to college with, once you get out of classes, which is like 4 to 6 hours a day, what do I do with all the spare time? There's only so many beers and pizzas to eat. So we started going to the gym together. His name's Curtis Sullivan, by the way. I forgot to mention his name. Started going to the gym together, really just as the typical bros in the gym to look better. I was tiny. He was already a pretty sizable dude at 6 foot 225. I was 5'5" at 112 or something like that. So I had some more work to do than he did, but just two guys in there training to train. And at some point, probably around 2009, 2010, he got the bite to or the itch to compete based on the people he was seeing in the gym where home was for him. So he competed during college, and then I was training with him for that to help him, and started seeing that as a goal for myself. We both saw that Jay quad stomp photo and like, wow, man, this is cool as shit. Like on the ride home from GNC with the Nitro Tech and all that crap. And that's where it started. My first show was the Branch Warren Classic in 2013. After college, we moved to Texas. He moved and then got me a job with him in a testing, oil and gas testing R&D center So we moved to Texas. My first show was 2013. Like every other first time competitor, thought I was the shit, thought I was on the ride to the pro card. Thought I was shredded, thought I was big, ended up being a pretty watery light heavyweight at like high 170s. And I think I posted a couple already, but I'll be posting more because you have to post the embarrassing first show photos. So got sixth there or something, had a decent local show, and then didn't compete again until 2017, when I was legit light heavyweight, no longer a really tiny light heavyweight.
So what was the reasoning for the gap between 2013 and 2017? Just life, or what was that about?
Yeah, mostly life. I tell everyone when they ask like how long I've been doing this, because I always make it very, very strong point to say I've been doing this for a decade. Could you do it faster than me? Absolutely. You can absolutely do it faster than me, but don't get in this and think you're going to do it in 3 years. A decade seems to be pretty typical for most people. But yeah, the big gap was mostly due to life. So we moved to Texas. I competed. That is what it is. Shortly after, the two of us started a high-end car detailing business. Wasn't high-end when we started, obviously. It was pretty silly when we got going, but by the time it was fully rolling, we got from bare shop walls in a 3,000 square foot shop to kind of leading the industry down there. We didn't take anything out. Everything we earned got put straight back into getting equipment, building clean rooms, attacking something that, car detailing, something that's not very technical with an engineering mindset, because we're both engineers. And if you look around at the industry now, it's kind of cool. We were kind of the first ones doing the whole big white room, clean room, recycled air, filters, and he was a really good photographer. So we had that going as well. So we started a business. My girlfriend moved down with me to Houston. And we were kind of just doing life, enjoying being young engineers, young business owners, and, meeting the people that working on Lambos, Ferraris, McLarens, like opened us up to. It's a very cool group of people with, a lot of connections and guys that know how to have a lot of fun. So we just kind of enjoyed that for a while. And we moved back to the Boston area up here around 2015. I think it was winter 2015. My wife's father, my father-in-law, John, was getting worse with prostate cancer. So it was time to come home. So we came home and got home, got settled. I had lost Kurt in the shop. So I suddenly had a whole bunch of free time. I went from 40 hours a week as an engineer plus 60 hours working my business to living back in an in-law, working 40 hours a week and having nothing else. So I had trained that entire time through the 4 years. It wasn't really a huge layoff, but there were definitely other priorities. So you know how that goes. Skip a meal here, skip a meal there, have a couple extra drinks here, lose some sleep here, and it just starts to add up. So got back home, got in the gym seriously. And then 2 years later, my qualifier was the New England Championships, which was in November, early November. And then we did NPC Nationals, which was in Miami at that point, and ended up 7th as a middleweight, just barely squeezed into 176. And then at that point, low first call out, high second call out. My first time there, I was like, all right, maybe this is legit. Maybe I have a chance at this. I still enjoy this even after that long gap of not competing. And it definitely got more serious. My wife and I bought our house in just over the New Hampshire border in 2017. Well, she'll kill me if I don't mention we got married in 2016. That came first. Married in 2016, bought our house in 2017. And then at that point, when we bought the house, my circle got like really, really small. We have my house. I could throw a stone to my gym. The Hannaford supermarket is like a mile more down the street. Everything got tiny. Everything got easier. And then so 2019 competed again in Rhode Island for the Rhode Island Muscle Show put on by Nikki Navas. Won the overall there. That was my first overall win. And then we went to USA's, where Many may not consider it embarrassing, but I was embarrassed because I expected more of myself. Ended up in 14th there. A lot of decent names in that list, but still expected more. Came in watery, didn't nail my peak whatsoever. Weight wise was, clearly a light heavyweight, was in the mid 190s when I weighed in, but physique wise, visually, still definitely had some time in the oven to go there. So that brings us to the COVID year, 2020, where most people got absolutely screwed out of being in the gym, which blows. I was fortunate enough that my home gym here in Hampstead was only closed for about 6 weeks. In that meantime, I had a private space to be training in, so I didn't miss all that much time. Got cut down on the variety of movements I could execute on, but still stayed weight training, still stayed strong. Once the gym opened back up, I was the first one in. Went through that whole year just growing, and on the other side of it, ended up competing early 2021 in West Palm at the same stage weight as I did at USA's, but clearly bigger. The body's really weird like that. I would love for someone to explain to me how that all works, how muscle maturity and memory kind of contributes to being the same weight, but looking totally different. So won the overall at the Anna Level West Palm Beach Classic. And then, so that was early this year. Use that as an opportunity to rebound, very structured out of, with the plans of making it to nationals at the end of this year. So all through the summer, I think that show was May, all through the summer, stayed structured, ate my ass off, train hard, with the intent of going to nationals. About 5 weeks out of nationals, I was like to my coach, there's a show in Long Island. I know some people there. I'd like to do it. Can we do it? He's like, sure, let's go do it. So went there, totally bombed another peak, because we were still searching for that equation, searching for the right variables to get me on stage looking as best as I could. Completely blew it, which was a bit disheartening, but still won the overall. But again, scratched off another route that didn't work for the peak, and then got right back to work for nationals. I think doing that show was the right decision for 2 reasons. One, again, to scratch off anything that didn't work, which is good for us. And then also as a little bit of a kick in the ass to be ready for nationals a bit earlier, because it kind of, ratcheted things up a little bit. And then here we are.
All right. So before we talk all things nationals, I want to talk about something in terms of the reason why, like when you first kind of got exposed to bodybuilding, right? Coming out of that more sport specific training, when you first got exposed to bodybuilding, what was it that kind of like really pulled you into bodybuilding? And then after you competed, you had that like 4-year layoff, and then you came back and competed again. What was it that kind of continued to draw you back to bodybuilding, and what kind of keeps you within bodybuilding? Because even though you said earlier, like, hey, like this is something we choose to do, it's not for everybody. And it is
Right.
it is a very hard, time consuming endeavor. So what is it that pulled you in? What keeps you in bodybuilding, Mike?
Sure. So, the first thing that pulled me into it in general was training. I just enjoy training. I needed something to do when sports were gone. That filled a big time gap. I enjoy pushing myself and enjoy the struggle and the pain, and then looking at the logbook and seeing that you beat last week. I think most competitors can relate to that. But the biggest thing for me to start, and this is still definitely part of it, though it's not all of it at this point. It used to be all of it, though, was needing something to compete in. I like competing. I like measuring myself against others. I like that aspect of athletics. So when the gym became it, I was like, okay, how can I compete? Powerlifting, for whatever reason, I just never got heavily exposed to. Strong and about 1.5 feet too short for that shit. So bodybuilding was it, and I had some resources around me. My buddy Curtis made his way into some circles in St. Louis with some pretty decent guys, some amateurs, some high-level amateurs, and some pros. And that kind of just snowballed. And that got me through my first couple of shows where I really wanted to compete, wanted a goal, wanted to be able to set a time frame to achieve something and get after it. What keeps me there now, though, is a little different. I would say around between 2017 and 2019, really kind of found like the art in it. I'm very big on posing. If you haven't noticed from any of my posts, I'm huge on presentation. I thoroughly enjoy perfecting that. And I know some guys lament the fact that the posing routine still exists, but I have an absolute blast with it. So the artful side of it, of my routines and my presentation, coupled with the stuff that photographers like Will Whitman are doing, it's just if you don't understand bodybuilding, there's near zero chance you understand what I'm talking about as far as the art side of it. But if you do understand bodybuilding and you've seen Will's work and you've seen guys like Terrence pose on stage, then you understand what I mean when I say bodybuilding is art. So that's a big part of it for me now as well. Now that my son's here, it's really an outlet for me to kind of demonstrate to him what work is. He's not really going to understand what I do on the computer all day. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's really that exciting. But he is going to see, now that he's grown up a little bit, he's 4. So he's going to start getting it. He understands when I go to shows. He asked me why I didn't bring home another trophy. I was kind of pissed they didn't give us trophies at nationals, but we'll talk about that at some point later. He's starting to get it. And him seeing the day-to-day discipline of doing the same thing in and out over a period of time, I hope becomes something that he internalizes. Not that I want him to be a bodybuilder. If he wants to, that's cool, but there's going to be absolutely zero pressure, and I prefer if he didn't. But seeing the day-to-day, seeing the grind, seeing that success and failure is really just about doing the fundamentals, perfecting the fundamentals, and doing them every single day for a decade. So I hope he sees that. I also hope he gets to see the fun side of it. I hope we get to travel a little bit. Hope he gets to see some of the spectacle that pro shows are. But if he takes nothing else away from this, I hope it's the work.
Love that, man. So when did it enter your mind in terms of you thinking that, hey, maybe at some point I could be an IFBB pro bodybuilder? At what part of this experience, this journey, did you say, hey, this could happen?
It's funny. I don't know how many other guys share this because I haven't really had this discussion yet. I've kind of just been overwhelmed with the response and trying to just keep up with everybody. For me, it actually got less and less of a thing for me the deeper I went into my career. You do your first show, at least for me, and I was like, hell yeah, like look how much muscle I put on, look how shredded I am, I can do this. And you go to that first national show and get your ass kicked, and you look like shit compared to the guys that got first and second. You're like, God damn. And then you do it again, right? And then for me, it took 3 times, but plenty of guys do it 5, 6, 8, 10. I think if you truly ask people, they'd tell you that it got less certain, not more certain for them as they went on. I thought, USA's, I thought we were bringing a solid package. I was pretty peeled. We just blew the peak. Not that my good peak would have won me the show, because it absolutely wouldn't, looking at the photos. But you go through all that, kind of maximize what you can, come out with a losing effort, and it rattles you a little bit. So this time really didn't set any expectations. If you noticed, I had 0 social media attention, mostly on purpose. I think I posted twice between the show, between the end of my rebound and this show and nationals. Posted twice about my physique. Most of my Instagram between then and now has been family, for a couple of reasons. One, because I just didn't have time for it. I don't have time for the hype. I got a kid, I got a wife, I got work. I'm going to go work. I'll post when I want to. I'll see you guys on stage. But also because those expectations are killer, man. If you look at some of the bigger amateur bodybuilding social media pages, at least in light heavyweight, they missed it, man. I mean, there are so many dudes that showed up that weren't on the radar, that filled out that first call out. And I definitely don't want to mention any names here, but hype can be an absolute killer. So I stayed away from it. I didn't set expectations. I knew what we were bringing was going to be strong, but you never know. And I tell everybody that. They say, you think you're going to win? I'm like, I'm confident in what I'm doing, but you never know who shows up. You can never control that. All I can control is the work I do and the package I bring. had confidence that my coach would figure it out because we scratched everything off the list. Did everything I could to prepare early. I got into Orlando on Tuesday, so I was there for almost a full week. We had a couple other athletes there with us. Everyone was, on the same page, food shopping, cooking, training, rest, posing, photos. It was, we were just a well-oiled machine. So I really didn't think it was possible until we got off stage after prejudging, and they didn't move me. They called me out to left of center, which was what appeared to be first place all day. Left me there, shuffled a couple other guys around, ended up with I believe his name's Chauncey or Chancey. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Next to me, and that dude's a freak. That he's going to have an absolute banger of a career in the IFB with that muscle shape and that roundness. And then while you're up there, you're just working. Like, you get the lights in your face, got 11 judges in front of you staring at you, trying to make sure you present yourself well and do all the things that you've been practicing. It doesn't really hit you until you get off stage and lights are off and you see your coach, your wife, and your other athletes standing there like big ass grins in their faces. And that's when it kind of hit me that this is possible. So went back to our Airbnb, and Instagram was just going absolutely crazy. Started seeing the names that were messaging me or commenting on reposts or commenting on my posts. And it started to sink in that I could actually do this, but nothing even remotely close to like weeks or months or years before this show.
All right. So before we recap nationals, I want to ask you about your coach specifically, and I want to read something to you and to the viewers and the listeners of the podcast that you just recently posted on your Instagram, because it caught my attention. So talking about your own coach, and then I'm going to read this, and I want you to expound more on this because I think it's something very valuable for myself to hear. I think it's going to be very valuable for the viewers and the listeners. So I'm going to read this. I want you to talk about your coach. I want you to expound on this. Okay, Mike?
You got it.
So what you post is just something short, sweet, to the point, but it says, stop looking to change variables and start looking to develop and execute at a higher level. Now, this was taken off of, I think you had a picture of your 2019 USAs where you placed 14th place, right next to a picture of this last weekend's nationals where you earned your IFBB Pro Card. And that was kind of the caption. So talk about your coach, expound on what I just read, and then we'll go from there. Hey, I can't hear you, Mike.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine. You're good.
So I'm coached by Stealth Aesthetics. The head coach there is Qua Pham. Not a very well-known name. I mean, some people have heard of Stealth, but we're generally small. I met Qua, who's called Tuna Sauce on Instagram, so I'm going to call him Tuna because I prefer that. Met Tuna in 2017 via another competitor who was with him at that point. And linked up with him for the 2019 show season. And after that, he actually brought me on as a coach for him. So, we coached together, kind of partnership here. And been with him since then. And it's been a ride. There was some criticism floating around earlier this year about, what we were capable of together. And what it means that he isn't a competitive bodybuilder anymore. He used to compete in Classic, I believe. But there's definitely some doubt because, there's a few very big names in coaching, especially when you get to the national level. I mean, if you look at the nationals results this year, Matt Jansen, just absolutely mopped the floor and everywhere. And that's how it usually works out. The big names are big names for a reason. Those guys do incredible jobs. They bring in athletes sharp. Matt's nailed every single peak he's done for any amateur or any pro athlete for the last 2 years. And it's honestly incredible. My situation is a little different. I met Tuna 2017. We won our first overall in 2019. And what was a coaching relationship turned into a very, very good friendship. I was at his wedding earlier this year. I've stayed at his house. He's going to come up here next year. We're very close. And for better or worse, that was one of the criticisms I got. Oh, you just keep him around because he's a good friend. Would that affect it? Probably. But I have faith that someone like him, he's a doctor, so I know he knows the medical side of this. He knows, all the protocol stuff. I feel very safe working with him. I knew he'd figure it out. So we, like I said, crossed all this other stuff off the list as far as how to get me on stage at my very best. It turns out I just hold a shit ton of water, so we had to do a long, slow, very methodical dry out, and we got the result we needed. So I'm just, to be perfectly honest, that is the most satisfying part of this entire process, was finally figuring that out. The result's nice. Obviously, I'm stoked to be a pro. It's I can't even describe the feeling of it. But that feeling of like finally crushing that in, the mistakes and the missed marks, just grinding them into powder and nailing it, truly nailing it. What I think is, one of the more conditioned physiques in the show, I think most people would agree, is it's just as good as it gets. So as far as the Instagram posts, there's a couple people that thought I was taking shots at them, and I can assure you that was not the case. That was not directed at anybody. But there seems to be this trend going around of coach hopping, which, if there's a serious problem with your coach, man, don't stay with your coach, right? Like if your health's in danger, or you're truly just screwing up, not making the progress you want, find someone else with good recommendations, people or from people that are doing well, and reset and get after it. But in general, I think people are too quick to blame the variables that can like easily be changed versus the ones that require them to do some soul searching and some work themselves. People are always looking for new training methods, new foods, new coaches, new drugs, new this, new that. And when you reset that every show or every 2 shows, you don't give the coach you're working with the opportunity to actually learn anything about you. And what you're going to end up with every time, for the most part, is not a cookie cutter approach, because I hope you don't get that. If you're with a coach, you just cookie cutter shit, get out. What you're going to end up with is their baseline, because every coach has a baseline of where they like to start with what has worked with most of their athletes, or at least, a good majority of them. And if you keep hopping, that's where you're going to end up. And there's no competitor that's the same on that stage. There's what we did to get that look for nationals might have worked for a couple other guys at the show, but for the most part would not have been perfect for anyone. And that's the way it works. That's the art in coaching. And I knew Tuna would get it. I knew we'd get there, but you don't get that if you keep hopping. You don't get that opportunity to learn even the small tweaks. I mean, how much water you have per meal, when you cut water the night before, what foods you're eating, how many carbs per day. All those things are impossible to learn in a single prep. And I would argue impossible to learn in 3 or 4 preps. So that was just a push to hope people pay attention to have a little more trust in the process and look for fault internally before they try to place it externally.
Great perspective. Now, I compete in bodybuilding myself, and I think that this understanding or mindset of having like extreme ownership, right? I own a business, I'm in real estate, and it's like all of this, no matter what, like no matter what happens, good or bad, like if it's my responsibility, then I need to take ownership for it. Even if it was, whatever. And I feel like a lot of times the vibe that I get sometimes with a lot of bodybuilders is like, they want to blame everybody and everything else, as opposed to taking extreme ownership and taking responsibility for themselves and maybe, something that on their end. Why don't you speak about that? Do you kind of get that same vibe, Mike? And have you experienced that yourself around other athletes?
So it's awesome that you mentioned the extreme ownership thing, because I assume you read Jocko. That's something I read his book this year. I've tried to put that into work as best I can in my life, namely in my career, which has served me very well. And actually the small team that I have has started to adopt it, and it's just paid dividends so far. But It's awesome that you mentioned that. I think in general, not even just bodybuilding, that concept is simultaneously so valid and so far-fetched to people that it's impossible to explain until they start to see you do it. People literally don't know what to do when you take ownership of something that wasn't your fault, like directly your fault in a meeting or, in a conversation. They have no idea what to do. And from your end, the power of owning everything that goes wrong, regardless if it was yours or not, because you wanted an outcome and you didn't get it, that power is like literally no one can take it from you. That is the single best part about it. If you own that shit day in, day out, you will absolutely get to where you need to be. As far as how that applies to bodybuilding, it definitely exists. I mean, it's always something, man. I think for the most part, and I will say this, I want to footnote this point. I think the loudest voices in the IFBB, especially right now, are doing a fantastic job of not doing this. I think the younger generation is doing an incredible job of blaming absolutely nobody for anything. Look to guys like Ian, like Nick Walker, the guys that are just out there doing it every single day, growing at a pace and progressing at a pace that people are just not familiar with, and just getting after it. And I think for the most part, when those loudest voices are doing that, we're headed in the right direction. Now, there's always the whiny, the ungrateful, the bitching. That stuff always exists, and it's, without mentioning names on the negative side of it, I think everyone knows who they are. For the most part, I don't know if it comes from this like false sense of needing to have drama, like we need to have some problems, we need to have rivalries, we need to have this and that, but it still exists. And if you looked at Nationals posts, talking about the amateur side of it, you're always going to see these posts that are like, came into Nationals with an awesome physique and somehow got third call out, don't know what the judges saw, don't know how I got overlooked, got to reassess my place in the sport. Dude, go home and reassess what you did to get here. The 5 people that are scoring you and the 6 others they have to back them up, 11 people staring at you at Nationals, know what the fuck they're talking about. And if you look at the results for the winners in a 900 person show, biggest national show of all time, if I'm not mistaken, every single person who got a pro card earned that shit this year. There's not a single person that can say they gave out pro cards, or that was a free card, or that was an easy win. All the classes, at least in the men's side, were like 45 people deep. And even the lighter guys, man, all of them are going to be able to make an impact if they stay with it. And I don't think anyone's really been able to say that about a national show in a very long time. But that shit always exists. I think another reason I avoid the hype, because competitors get the coaches and their families and their friends and the yes men on Instagram, and everybody looks good alone. Everyone that got on stage for the most part in any of those classes, as barring a few, probably looked fucking fantastic on Instagram. Look great in the gym, training by themselves, look great posing for their buddies. But Nationals is a different beast. And if you want to be a pro, like it's a different ball game. I've seen a few. It hasn't been prolific, which is great. I haven't seen a shit ton of them, but they always exist. And I think those guys, even if they make it pro, never have serious success. And I don't think that's unique to bodybuilding. I think that applies everywhere. You might be able to sneak a couple W's here and there. But if that mindset persists, you're not winning long term.
Excellent, man. All right. So let's start wrapping this up with talking all things national. So we kind of left off where you said you stepped off the pre-judge stage. You see your coach, you see your wife, see some of the other competitors that you guys brought. Talk about just kind of like, because talking to some of the other competitors, it was, I know, a very long wait from pre-judging to the night show. I know Nate Spear said from the time that he got off pre-judging to when he was on finals, it was like 8 hours. I mean, that's a full work day. So that's That's a lot, man. That I think that would mess with my mind a little bit. But so talk about that weight from prejudging to finals. How did you kind of deal with that? And then let's talk about finals, talk about your routine, talk about that moment when you knew you got that pro card.
Sure. So just to start the conversation back at the beginning of that day, just to give everybody who isn't familiar what that day actually looks like. You put your tan on the night before, sometime between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., something like that. You go home. Most guys get a decent meal, like a burger or something, and you're feeling fucking great, right? You feel great. And then you wake up at like 4:30 in the morning to get your second coat. So your day starts at 4:30. Okay. Second coat of tan goes on, come home. And then, from this point on, I'll just speak to what my process was with tuna and my athletes. Come home with the second coat of tan on, immediately pose, figure out what direction we need to head in with food, cook a meal, eat, sit down for an hour, try to relax. Another hour and a half, 2 hours between, do it again. Stand up, pose, cook a meal, sit down, relax. Until about 9:30-ish when we got to the show. Show up about 9:30 and competitors room is just packed. I mean, 7 classes in bodybuilding, at least 35 guys in every class, as many as 46, I think. Do the math on that. It is overwhelming. But I will say, I want to shout out the whole Nationals crew and the Cheru crew, that to get that many people through a show that efficiently, even though prejudging did run long, absolutely incredible. I mean, I've been to local shows that weren't run that well with 40 guys, never mind 40 per class. And I know it was a super long day for everybody, but they did an incredible job. And the production value, holy shit, the production value at Nationals, just incredible. But get off stage prejudging, get a giant kiss from my wife, give Tuna a big hug, and start to do some head nods and think like, man, we might have this. Get back to the house probably around 12:30. Again, pose, see what we need to do for food, cook a meal, relax. And at that point, we had already done the females on Friday. So our figure girl, Jen, had already competed and crushed it in her first national appearance, first call out, which is amazing. But, you get through morning show. We got our 2 classic guys who got 2 second call outs, and they're in the first nationals appearance. But get back to the house and you start to relax a little bit because, half the work's done. But I will say that this is my first time being at nationals as a coach, a contributing coach. I mostly handled posing and stuff like that. Tuna mostly did diets and all that. But having other people to worry about definitely changes the mentality, makes that waiting around much easier. Worrying about others removes a lot of stress, my personal stress, and made all that much easier for me. So as far as like how nationals went as a team with the people we brought, could not be happier. But yeah, basically the same process, right? Do the whole posing and eating thing until it's time for night show. Prejudging ran from 9 a.m. to 5:30. Finals was supposed to start at 5. So they backed finals up to 7:30. Bodybuilding's on last. So, and then I think it was bodybuilding with figure 2 classes behind that, and classic also in there. So all of our people were in the second half of the show. So we basically sat in the house with our feet up, doing the same thing we've been doing all day, watching the stream, waiting for, the right time to go there and get after it, because no one wants to sit backstage where it's hot and the floor is hard and there's people bustling around everywhere. So keep people on the couch and relax till it's time to go. Went there, got everyone situated. Saw the people we brought do very well. Jen ended up in 5th for her first national show, and she's got all the tools to go get it like immediately. So she's got a couple things to handle, but I would not be surprised to see her on a national stage very soon, and in the pro league not long after that. So our 2 classic physique guys ended up middle end of second call outs for their first national show, which again, stat classes, man, Both those guys have great physiques. Got some things to tweak. We're going to get after it and come back. And then it was my turn. So, seeing Jen move up a spot, or, get that uncertainty away from being 6th to 5th, automatically requalifying, being floored, seeing her get the, her medal and all that, just jacked me up. And again, they ran a super efficient night show. It was just fast, almost a whirlwind, to be honest. And getting lined up as one of the 5 guys to get to do a routine, which is the first time I've ever been able to do that at nationals, is hard to describe. Obviously not on the level of actually winning, but for some reason, I don't know what it was. I don't know whether if it had just been that long of a day, because we didn't get on stage till midnight, 11:30, midnight, something like that. If I was just burnt, or if I had exhausted all nerves and emotion on the wins or the placings of my other competitors, or if it had just been long enough that I was ready for this. Got out there for a routine with like 0 nerves, which is very, very new for me. Executed my routine like way better than I anticipated, to the point where I saw the video and was surprised it was as good as it was. I mean, I practice it. I love posing, but nerves always get me at least one transition or one pose when I'm up there. And for whatever reason, just absolutely crushed it. Had a blast doing it. Got that first place, got to relax a little bit. And then it's like, oh shit, overall time. Like we're not done yet. They start ushering you off stage and people are chugging water. Not yet. No cookies, no water. I'm going to eat what I did to pump up for light heavyweight, and we're going out and we're doing it again. Obviously Carlos was the clear favorite. I mean, the attention and press that he got as an amateur pre-show was absolutely insane. I mean, the kid's physique is absolutely lights out. He's going to be an absolute threat. But everyone who was up there went out to, one, have a good time. That was the most fun I've had in a pose down ever. And 2, was out there to win it. I mean, we all knew who Carlos was, but it doesn't mean he's gonna take it. So went out there, went hard. Had a blast with Justin Jacoby, one of Jansen's guys who took the middleweight title. And that was it, man. It was just I think we got out of the venue at like 2, which means that pretty much every restaurant in the city's closed. Tried to go to Denny's, which like would not serve us because they didn't have enough people to staff the place for 200 bodybuilders leaving nationals at 2 a.m. So ended up with a simple McDonald's meal back at the place with all the team, and got 0 sleep that night. So full 36 hours by the time I got some rest. None of us could sleep. You finish eating like 3:30 and had to be out of the Airbnb by 10 a.m. So you're like, shit, I gotta be up at 7 anyway. Why at this point, the nerves, I mean, not nerves, but adrenaline's running so high, you're just kind of on cloud 9. No sleep. It felt amazing. I don't know.
So I know before we kind of turned on the mic, you said, I kind of asked you how everything's gone post nationals. You're like, man, it's still kind of hard to grasp. I mean, have you had a few quiet moments since that weekend just to kind of start processing things, or is it still kind of just murky up in your mind? It's going to take a little while to work through all that.
It's funny. Well, there's a few levels to this, right? So starting back when that was announced, when I heard my name, there was a moment there that Will caught on camera that I'll forever be grateful that he caught. We talked about it briefly, where there's lots of guys that fall to their knees or have that immediate outpouring of emotion, and I just couldn't do anything but look up. and relax. And most of that is due to the fact that my father-in-law became a very close friend and father figure of mine before he passed. He passed right before my first nationals appearance in 2017. And I always consider that a job unfinished, because he was always excited about what I was doing. He was always asking. He was in the gym right up until he couldn't be. And all I could do was look up, because I knew he was looking down on it. So that was my first moment. Since then, there's been very few, because you get back with the house, the team, and everyone's jacked up and like, holy shit, Mike's pro, and Jen got fifth, and our two classic guys did great for their first national show, and there's just excitement, right? And you're still with everybody. I want to shout out the second moment there to Jen, though. We're sitting on the couch. It's like 5 a.m. sipping a cup of coffee, eating some Fat Polly cookies or something like that, or some cupcakes that Tuna's wife sent to us. And she just looks at me and she goes, "I have a gift for you." And so she can't say no. So she runs through her bag, and I hear her rustling. And we both have Wolfpack bags. And she brings me over a patch, the IFBB Pro patch that they sell. And she says, "I thought it was my time, but it's yours, so I want you to have this." And like, taking that from her was like the second moment I was like, holy shit, like, this is actually real. And I will also never forget that gesture from her. That was shit out of a movie. Like, that doesn't happen in real life. But come home, and man, I got a son, I got a family that's been sacrificing for me all year as I've prepped for this. And it's been an absolute nonstop whirlwind, putting the bodybuilding stuff aside, finishing up Christmas shopping, seeing all the family, wrapping gifts till 2 a.m., watching him shred through wrapping paper, watching him enjoy those new toys, trying to catch up with all the people, friends included, that haven't been able to spend a lot of time with over the last year. And I really haven't had that, I guess, that kind of personal moment to myself yet. And for me, I don't know when that's going to come. I'm sure it'll hit me eventually. But the first thing you heard off stage, one of the first things is, mention of 212. And I'm like, shit, like, I was 190 pounds by the time we got to finals. That's 22 pounds away. Like, holy hell. So to me, it just comes back. Now it's just work. It's just work again. Back to fasted cardio, back to, as soon as I could bring myself to eat my regular diet, back to that. Definitely enjoyed a little bit too much food, but we'll work that off. But it's small fish in a big pond again. And that is probably the most exciting part to me, is having that capacity for more work again, having that room to grow again, having something to chase again. Because for a lot of people, IFBB Pro is the goal. And I don't know that you really think past that. I mean, certainly some people do, because their aspirations might be, just far bigger. They might have grown up in bodybuilding their whole life or whatever it was. But for most people, I think IFBB Pro is the wall, right? And you walk through the door, you don't know where you're going after that. For me, it just became immediately clear that we just have more work to do. So we're getting back to work. And when it hits me, I'm sure I'll make sure to let you know. But it hasn't yet. I can truthfully say that. And I'm still amazed by the outpouring for people that definitely don't need to. Like, you expect your family and friends, because they were with you the whole time, and they watched the process, and they watched you work. But the outpouring from people that I've never met, pros that I've never met, coaches I've never met, names that I've been looking up to for my entire time in bodybuilding. It's absolutely surreal. And I don't know if I'll ever get used to this, to be perfectly honest.
I think it's awesome. And I've asked a couple of the other new pros from nationals this question. So I want to ask you, Mike, you just kind of mentioned, a bunch of people reaching out, people that you looked up to. Who was somebody that really caught you off guard, that maybe sent you a DM or sent you a text message, or reached out some way, somehow, after you turned pro?
So there were several. I'm going to back it up a little bit, though. I actually got to spend most of the week with Tony O'Burton, who actually whooped my ass at USA's. in 2019, and having him in the circle just for the mental adjustment of, dude, you're ready for this, you're bringing it. Having that all week was absolutely instrumental. And I don't know if I can ever express to him what that meant as someone who does not spend a lot of time around pros. Up here in New Hampshire, we get like 3. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that like Nate Spear is 5 miles away. I didn't even know he trains that close to me. Could have been training with someone like that 5 years now. I had no idea. Spent the week with Tonio. That was great. Keon, like FaceTimed out of nowhere. Jen knows everybody. Let me just say that first. Our athlete Jen knows fucking everybody. She's sitting on the couch and goes, "Hey, let's pose." And I knew she was on the phone, and I assumed it was related. I'm like, "Who is that?" She goes, "Keon." I'm like, what? Turns the phone around and he's just staring at me. I'm like, holy shit, man. So right there, just ran through mandatories. That was awesome. Got back from prejudging and saw Ian comment on, I think it was a buys and tries post on social media about my physique and my potential, and just like couldn't believe reading that. Got a DM from Dante Trudell about my conditioning, which I take pride in, that we finally did that. And that just floored me. Seth Feroci commented on one of my posts, which Seth is as as crazy as he is, very much a man after my own heart with the family stuff, and with making sure you're around for your family after the health struggles he has. I think he's one to speak on it, and I take a lot of pointers from him. And I'm sure I'm going to miss people because there were several, but those stood out, and especially to have those things happen between prejudging and finals, where there's still some uncertainty, right? Like they didn't move me, but like the dude next to me looks great. Or we gotta keep it tight for finals because we can't lose an inch. Hearing those things between just fix my ass right up, and I was ready to go for finals.
Cool, man. Okay, two more quick questions here, and then we're gonna call it a day for our conversation, Mike. So the first thing, you kind of already brought it up, but I want you to get a little bit more specific if you can at this point. But what are the future plans within the IFBB? Are you going to take all of 2022 off? Are you going to try to do something maybe late in the year? Have you thought about it? Let us know about that, please.
Yeah. So while this is all happening at Nationals, it was that weekend. I noticed that the Boston Pro Show account was going nuts. I saw that and I was like, man, that'd be fucking cool. They don't have 212 though. So I didn't realize that at the time, but that's definitely not an option at this point. Would have been awesome. I hope in the future that show stays and that they do add 212, because I would love to compete at home. I would love for, my extended family and my close friends to be able to see that firsthand, because there's only a handful of people that have come to shows with me. So I really hope they do add 212 and I can do that in the future. But in general, just, getting off stage after weighing, I weighed in at 196 on Thursday. And by the time we left for finals Saturday, sorry, I was 190. So like we said earlier, that's 22 pounds to the max of 212. And I don't have to max out the division to compete in it, but I'm not going to give up 22 pounds to 212 pros at 5'5". Like I'm not the shortest guy in the division by any stretch of the imagination. So there's, a substantial amount of work in front of us. So tentatively right now, the plan is to make sure we're healthy. We're going to get blood work. Going to keep things simple. Going to get back on like a 2 to 3 weeks out diet and ride that until we're sure that everything looks good. And then get back to doing what I know how to do best. And then if things go really, really well, maybe we'll consider something end of the year. I haven't even looked at what the pro schedule looks like for the end of the year. But the big thing when everyone asks this question is you only get one pro debut. You only get one. And in general, if you're decent, that generates some hype on its own, just the fact that it's your first show. And I don't want to waste that. So when we do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to come in as best we can, not going to rush it. So whether that ends up being end of 2022 or sometime in 2023, I don't know. I think most people who know bodybuilding know what 22 pounds of lean mass looks like and what it takes. So I'm definitely not trying to rush that. We'll take it as it comes. We're obviously going to push as hard as we can to make it happen, but definitely not in any rush. I need a break. My wife and son deserve a break, to have me at home a little bit more with less focus on me and more focus on them. And that's the focus right now. That's where we're at.
Love it, man. You make sure, if you remember, before your pro debut, you reach out to me, man. We'll get you back on the podcast and we'll talk all things pro debut. Okay.
Will do, man. Yeah. I think, the days of zero media exposure prior to shows are probably over.
Yeah.
You can't really survive in the IFBB without some social media attention, for yourself, for sponsors, just whatever it might be. So I think those days are done. I think I have to get used to letting people in a little bit. So you will definitely be on the short list of the ones to hear it first.
Cool, man. No, that's awesome. And, before I ask you the last question here, that's something I like to share every once in a while, because I think a lot of people in your position that, get that IFBB Pro Card. And I think maybe you have a pretty strong perspective, but I think sometimes IFBB pros just fail to realize, like, as soon as you guys get that pro card, you guys have a platform to do
Right.
a lot with, positive, negative, nothing. But man, the platform that you get, you instantly get, just like people with eyes on you, waiting to watch you, waiting to listen to you. And
Right.
if you maneuver that in a positive manner, you can really impact a lot of people's lives. And that's why I'm always thankful for people like you and all the other guests that have been on this podcast. Like, hey, this isn't Fuad's podcast. This isn't Joe Rogan. You're not going to get a million followers. You're not going to get a bunch of exposure. The podcast is growing. I've got a very faithful following, got a lot of top NPC and IFBB pros that keep their eyes on the podcast. And we're going to keep going, right? I'm going to put in that work that you keep talking about. But you guys aren't going to gain a huge following from it, but you guys take the time, and it's a platform for you guys to share your story. Right. And I appreciate that. But I think that's just something for all of you guys to always just remember, which I know you are, Mike, is like, man, you guys have a platform now instantly. Yep. You've got eyes, you've got ears, and man, like, you can really, really positively impact a lot of lives. And most of the time that's going to be through social media. Right. So
right.
Just food for thought. And I know you realize that, but last thing I want to kind of touch on, you've laced it throughout your conversation, because I know this is a huge part of your life, but I want you to talk about being a dad. I want you to talk about, being a family man, and just how that kind of motivates you, drives you, and encourages you to keep putting in that work.
I mean, being a dad and a husband, man, it's the most fulfilling, frustrating, like, just clusterfuck of everything at all times. The first and foremost, for all you parents out there, or all you new parents with like infants, terrible twos is not it. Okay. It's terrible threes. Threes absolutely suck. If they're terrible at two, they're going to be worse at three. Just prepare yourself for that. We'll put that out there. Everyone needs to hear that. This whole thing about, being a dad, being a husband, sort of being not the norm in the IFBB, it's strange to me. It really is. I mean, I understand that this is pretty selfish sport. We do it with a lot of time and effort goes into you and only you. But I think if guys can take one thing from me or this podcast, every time you get up on that stage and every time you get through a prep, your capacity for work, not just bodybuilding, your capacity for work should increase. So your first show, you think you're the center of the world. You think it's so tough. You think you're doing the most monumental thing in the history of humanity. No one's ever done 45 minutes of cardio on the stairs at level 8 every day for 16 weeks or eating chicken and broccoli. That's how it is. And I get it. I've been there. But the next time it should be different. The next time you should say, okay, I'm just eating food, doing cardio and training with weights. You're still going to probably be a prick when you're hungry. You're still probably going to piss some people off. You're still probably going to slack at work a little bit when you're tired. But you'll get through it. And then the next show, it should be easier and you should be doing more. So I don't know if it's because I've just gotten lucky, or because I was so like subconsciously recognize that and just put it in play. But every one of my preps has kind of had this built into it, where like my first prep, it was pretty much just me. Like I was an asshole. I know I was. I'm probably lucky my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, didn't leave me, because it was just unnecessary. I just didn't need to be that way. It was the stereotypes that you hear and you think you need to be. But it was just me. We had no kids. We had one dog, a 2-bedroom apartment, no responsibilities. It was should have been the easiest prep of all time. 2017, we're married. So there's, I'm a husband now. She's pregnant. We're living in an in-law, but we both have, budding careers. There's more responsibility there. So you add it up, you still get it done. 2019, now I've got a son. Now I've got more responsibility at work. Now I own a home. And again, more capacity. If you want to do this thing, you got to learn to get it done. And now 2021, work is still crazy. I was working, actually, I talked to Boston Lloyd a couple weeks ago about this, or a couple days ago about this. Work from home is great for bodybuilding, but I was working 55, 60-hour weeks during prep as well. That's way easier from home than commuting to do it, but it's still a lot of work. So I get that, wife, son, house, dogs, all this other stuff going on. The goal for you young guys, or not even young guys, just less experienced guys, put this into perspective, try to grow every prep, try to make sure that the next time you do this, you're better as a person and more capable of handling other things that aren't prep. I think if you're stopping your entire life for prep, especially as an amateur, that's unsustainable. So figure it out. I think at the end of the day, you just got to remember that for the most part, unless you're a top 5 Olympian, this isn't it. And even if I ever get to the point where that's the case, where I'm a top 5 Olympian, bodybuilding will still never be the only thing in my life. It probably won't even be the top 2 or 3 things in my life. I will have just learned to make the things that are above it efficient and well-oiled enough to make sure that I can devote the time I need to bodybuilding while still doing what they need me to do. I think coming up short for family, friends, kids, because you want to get on stage in some panties and dance around is inexcusable. And that's really the end of it.
Very well put, man. All right, Mike. So before I close this out, if you do have any final thoughts or words, if you have any shout outs, the platform is yours. Make sure make sure you give out your Instagram, and then I'll close this out. So the floor is yours.
I think I've shouted out most people, and I post on Instagram, or actually it might be a draft right now, with like 30 names of everyone that's contributed from my first show to now. I'm not going to do that now. Everyone knows who they are. I do want to shout out my coach again, Tuna. You learned what we needed to learn. We've absolutely fucking nailed it. Made some big noise out of nowhere with zero hype, and just looking forward to doing it again in 212. To the athletes that were there with me at Nationals, I don't think you guys understand how motivational your achievements were, and how awesome it was to have you all there focused and ready to go regardless of the outcome. Some of the outcomes aren't what you want, but you all hit the ground running, ready to work after we got back, and that's incredible. Being able to help you guys took stress off of me, so I appreciate you all. And lastly, and most importantly, to my wife, who dealt with me all year prepping for 3 shows, helping, where I came up short occasionally with my son, dealing with the extra hours I worked at work, and just all together stepping up into a role that that most people never have asked of them. And I will never be able to repay her for the time and energy that she devoted to taking care of the things that needed to be done so that I could chase this. And I absolutely could not achieve where I am today without her. I'm fortunate enough that she's seen it all from the first show to now. Yeah, I'll never be able to find the words to properly thank her for this. So I just hope that my time in the IFBB is well spent. That we can spend some time traveling and meeting people and kind of having some more fun with this now that it's more of a job than it is just a stupid hobby of mine that wastes time and money. So we'll see how that goes.
Why don't you give everybody your Instagram, Mike?
Sure. So my Instagram is just my name, Mike Condell, Condell. Won't be changing. If you've been following me for a while, the page is absolutely going to be more bodybuilding than it's ever been. I apologize for that. If you don't like it, unfollow me. I may start a private one. If you're new to me on Instagram, I won't be changing. You're going to see more bodybuilding, but you're still going to see my family. You're still going to see what I think is right as far as some of the political shit going on. You're still going to see some rants occasionally. You're not going to see a different me. And bodybuilding again is not going to be the only thing you're going to see on my page. So either get used to it or unfollow.
There we go. All right, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your story with us.
I appreciate it, man. You're the first one to reach out for something like this. I'm never going to forget that. Appreciate the opportunity. It was great meeting you and great talking to you.
For sure. You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast. As always, I just want to say thank you to you, because if it wasn't for all of you guys listening and tuning in through YouTube, the podcast wouldn't exist. So I appreciate all of you. A couple quick things before I close this out. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Very important, because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I will distribute them to the other podcast platforms. So with all the episodes that I am releasing each week, if you want to stay current, stay up on all of them, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And then one last thing I would ask all of you, take this episode and share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Mike, tag myself, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it. And then one other favor, make sure Mike admittedly hasn't been up on the social media game. So make sure you guys also, once you tag Mike and tag Behind the Muscle, when you share this episode on your Instagram stories, why don't you go give Mike a follow? And I know, like he said, he's going to continue to just put the family stuff out there, more bodybuilding stuff. But it is a great follow. So make sure you go follow Mike on Instagram. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.
Appreciate it, man.